What's up, gente? What's up, Raza? Man, I want to talk about some bad lettuce today. And I'm joking, but I mean that seriously. You all probably heard that there's been an outbreak of some serious, digestive problems, stomach problems, all caused by some bad lettuce. Um, Lettuce that made people sick and definitely going to the restroom, diarrhea. I mean, exploding diarrhea, they're calling it. That's some bad lettuce. And I mention that because I want people to understand who are the people that, pick these fruits and vegetables and to keep us healthy, to keep us eating, good food and keep us, content. Well, it's our farm workers. The hardest people out there are the farm workers, factory workers, people that do the service, and they're of all colors and shapes. But we know a lot of them are raza, get paid low wages. And I'm gonna talk about how this bad lettuce has come along, why they're trying to cover it up now, and why and what we can do about it, because government people tend to dismiss it, but this is a failure of government. And I'll start with number one, because this stuff doesn't just happen overnight. Last July, the Trump administration's been in power for about a year, and one of the things that they did prior to that was to deregulate. Now, if you don't know what deregulation is, that's when they lax things for the business. They soften up the rules. They give more businesses, and they give people more freedom to do things without being regulated. Which means, for example, if I'm running a restaurant, I'm probably not going to be regulated as well as before, because after all, they're laxing the rules. If I'm shipping oil, pumping oil, or if I'm that kind of corporation with multi-billion-dollar, equipment, they're going to make it easier for me to go, find oil and ship oil and mine for oil without worrying about the government, coming down on me because I might be polluting the air or the water or whatever, right? Same thing for farmers. A lot of farmers are, straight up, they're white farmers, and then not all of them, but a lot of them are white. They love Trump's white supremacy talk and talk about immigrants and people. They ate that up. They also love Trump for another reason: the cheap labor and allowing them to again deregulate, to do their business without having to worry so much about government asking, hey, are these workers safe? Are these conditions safe? Is this food safe to eat? Right? That's what we call regulation. Some people, they hear regulation, they get scared. Regulation is not a bad thing if you're doing it for the right reason. Regulation just means you're keeping people in check. And in order for you to have a proper government with proper food, safe food, right? A proper government with the buildings are going to be built, or structures are going to be built without them, falling down because somebody cut corners. Deregulation, it results in catastrophes like what we've seen in other countries, poor countries, especially Haiti, for example. There's a lot of corruption there because the U.S. government's meddled with their government for so long that, a lot of people were building structures and they were falling apart every time they had an earthquake. Even the presidential palace, they cut corners and deregulated so badly, and that palace fell apart during one of the earthquakes. So deregulation is not a good thing, especially when it comes to our food source. And again, our hardest working people out there, they're just trying to make, their money and get home to their families. But with deregulation also means that businesses don't have to worry, or corporations, that they're going to be, held to answer if their workers are not being taken care of. And that includes working workers way too late, no health care. And then what if a worker wants to go to the bathroom or has to go to the bathroom? I know for a fact, and I know from experience, when you used to work in the fields, you couldn't just go use the bathroom. Back in the 70s, that was very difficult. In the 80s and the 90s, things started changing here in California, but that hasn't always been the case. We've gone backwards, right? Make America great means going backwards. The only people you're making America great for are the capitalists and the white supremacists. So making America great takes away from workers' rights, and a lot of these workers oftentimes they have to hold it, and if they don't hold it, that's bad for their stomach. That's going to cause internal issues, especially the women that have to work in factories that can't go to the bathroom. But also, farm workers. There's a possibility that, maybe somebody went to the bathroom. Possibility they didn't wash their hands. There's a possibility, because deregulation means you can cut those corners as a farmer, and force these people to work and get the job done as quickly. That way, you don't have to pay them extra, but you get the job done. But then when you cut corners, that's again going back to the example of building structures. When you cut corners, you're not getting quality work. You're going to get a rush job. Cut corners means you're going to get materials that are not as superior. They're going to, matter of fact, they're very inferior, and that's why buildings fall apart. And in this case, we got some bad lettuce out there. Now, something to report because this is Taylor lettuce. I think it's a Taylor Farms. This is a Trump supporting farmer, right? Gave to Trump a lot of money. All of a sudden, they announce it and talk about recalls, right? Their lettuce in their food. Taco Bell says, "Hey, we're not going to do this," and Trump gets mad at them. But really, it's this farm called Taylor Farms where Taco Bell themselves got the lettuce from. Well, it turns out now Donald Trump, his administration is saying, "Nope, that was a mistake. We messed up. Repeal that. They're good. They're okay." No, they're not okay. And that's the problem with capitalism. And you all heard me talk about capitalism. It's a disease of the mind because people think that you can actually get rich. Capitalism only serves the super wealthy that own the capital. That's why it's called capitalism. The vast majority of us will never be that super wealthy, the Elon Musk that owns all those equipment, all those giant. I'm not talking about a car, a truck, or even a tool shed. No, capitalism. You're talking about factories and giant earth movers. Those things to build tunnels. We don't own that kind of capital. It's these billionaires that do. And for them, capitalism is beautiful. For us, it's a pipe dream. The truth is, capitalism had its purpose, did well, replaced what we call feudalism, where the kings and queens would rule and people, followed out of ignorance, and the people underneath the kings and queens, including the nobles and the knights and all these people with property. They would take advantage of the serfs, the people who worked underneath them, or the peasants, the ones who farmed and gave their crop to the higher ups, who divided it up amongst the royals, and in exchange, the royals would protect these peasants. Right? That was the exchange. Capitalism came along and made it possible for us to produce things quicker, faster, even at a small scale. And I've seen this done in socialist countries where I visited, where people can run their own business and have small little businesses that do operate. But we're at the stage, some say the late stages of capitalism, where it's dying, and that's a great thing. But unfortunately, with the president like this, a corrupt administration that is running this country right now, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the guy in the White House in charge, he's a lawyer, not even a doctor, is in charge of health. I mean, health and humans. No way. This guy has nothing as far as know-how of how to run a country's food, drugs, health, anything related. This fool does not belong there. He's not qualified. As a matter of fact, people are saying that it's because of the cuts he's made, it's because the people he's appointed and those that he's fired that we are now suffering from this bad lettuce. And it's not just the bad lettuce. It's also, medications. It's also some of the vaccinations and things that have saved people's lives. He's an anti-vaxxer. He denies that, right? But the truth is, you go back and see what he's talked about. This guy did. He's talked about some stuff that getting rid of some medicines that have saved lives, and we're seeing that with Ebola in Africa and other parts of the world. People are dropping dead, and there has been a plan, and Ebola, I believe, had been eradicated here in the United States, along with measles and all these other things that killed people during the 1930s, right? The Great Depression. We got a lot of that in check, and we had it in control thanks to science and doctors, people who were qualified to deal with this kind of stuff. But here comes Trump in his first term, not this current term, and he got rid of a lot of that. And what happened? We got COVID. We got some crazy stuff going on in our society right now, including this bad lettuce. And now he comes for round two, where we see the bad lettuce, right? But bad lettuce, I'm using this as a way to describe the situation. But we've had these bad lettuce moments for a while now. And so, what can we do? So, what can we do to make this, a better situation? Obviously, people wash the fruits and vegetables, wash everything. Don't rely on it to be washed. Check out where you're buying it. And there's a lot of places that some of us have boycotted for a long time because they supported slave labor in Mexico, and then here in places in North America and around the world. When Al Rojas, one of the main leaders during the United Farm Workers Movement, when Al Rojas was alive, one of the things he fought against was Driscoll's. This was a corporation that had a stranglehold on all kinds of, I guess, supermarkets that would sell berries and fruits and vegetables, right? Al Rojas recognized that this corporation had so much money and people would bend over backwards, but they were getting wealthy at the expense of slave labor, child labor, women being abused in the fields, not just here in the United States, but in Mexico and other poor countries, right, where they produce this stuff. So he was ahead of the game, and he warned against this. So if there's a company out there that supports, for example, Taylor Farms or these bad lettuces, I would say, keep an eye, make a note of that, pass that info along because you want people to avoid that. Also, the second thing we could do is start becoming smart and wise about why the younger generation is rejecting capitalism. Right? Capitalism doesn't serve us, and young people are noticing this, realizing. That's why a lot of these these young politicians running for office aren't even Republicans. A lot of them not even Democrats. They are socialists, democratic socialists or socialists. That's a good sign from our younger generation. And now let me make this clear. A lot of Chicanos out there, especially older ones, older than me, you grew up during the 1950s and 60s. That's called the Red Scare. As a history teacher, I could tell you we were lied to because I was alive during the 60s and 70s, and I saw what was going on during the 70s and 80s with the Red Scare. People lied about communism and socialism just to scare you, right? A lot of us are scared thinking that those are bad things. No, they're not. They're actually good things, especially a socialist system that makes sure that the people own means of production, that the people benefit from things like corporations that produce these mass produce these food services or foods for us, right? When you cut deregulate things, when you cut things that people have to do, or you cut down the amount of, say, supervision that must and care that needs to be taken into food service, when you do that, you're going to get bad lettuce, you're going to get some horrible food that's not good for you, you're going to get some medications that are going to kill grandma and grandpa. Why? Because the capitalist corporations, the wealthy people who own and who are capitalists, they just want to make a buck. And if it means cutting down the regulations that keep us safe in terms of medical and health, then that's what we're ushering in, is an era of poor care, poor safeguards, no science. The Trump administration doesn't even believe in science. They don't believe in education. They're trying to get rid of the Department of Education. And what does that make us? It's going to make us very ignorant. So what we need is an economic system, a political system, raza, and people. We're going to need an economic system and political system that's better than capitalism. And what is our alternatives? Socialism, straight up the back. Socialism will be a great alternative. We see China does it, Cuba does it, and these are countries that the United States has been trying to keep poor forever and trying to destroy, and yet they produce things much better than we do. Especially when you look at a country like China, who's come and pulled billion people out of poverty, using their governmental systems that make sure that if a billionaire or a wealthy person, because you're allowed to be a wealthy person in China, even if they are a quote unquote communist country, but they make sure that they don't rob the people because that's who the government truly belongs to, right? The corporations truly belong to, these resources truly belong to the people. And if you break the law, if you're a corporation, you're selling bad lettuce, that's a crime against the people. Why do you guys think that China executes drug dealers, executes people who here we praise or we try to uplift and say, look how great they are, glamorize, I should say, right? They don't do that over there in China. They see that as a negative thing. Because they know it is a negative thing. Drugs kill people. Heck, China, where TikTok originated, and China was a partner in TikTok, because if you want to be a part of any corporation running in China, they tell you got to pay the people. 51% or 50% has to go to the people. That's smart from Chinese leaders. So as soon as everybody is on TikTok, people were like, oh yeah, there's some stupid stuff on TikTok. And you know what? There was. But if you go to China, that wasn't the case. They, even though TikTok was owned by majority Chinese people, they didn't allow that for their kids because they knew it was wrong. They only had a certain amount of hours. Content was not just whatever you could get on TikTok or whatever, because they know that poisons the minds of young children. Having said that, this is true for capitalism. It deregulates and allows the children here in the United States to see whatever, whenever. I mean, it is wild to take whatever and do whatever, and and ingest whatever, and it is wild what we allow here in the United States. And some people say, "Yeah, but that's our freedom. We got the freedom." I guess you got the freedom to kill your kids slowly, or you got the freedom to kill yourself slowly, but who pays the bill? Because if you smoke and I don't smoke, because I don't smoke cigarettes, right? Cigarettes been killing forever. But who picks up the tab here in the United States of America? We do. Those that don't smoke, those that, regardless of what we think about cigarettes, that might be a freedom, but we pick up the tab. So again, what do we need to fix this bad lettuce problem? I know I'm using that as a example of this bad economy here in the United States. We need to respect the workers. We need to again regulate these corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations. We need to go back and put real people to run these agencies like the Food and Drug Administration, Human Health and Human Services. All these corporations that have something to do with our lives, the environmental or education services. These are agencies that make a difference in our lives. But when we have fools and ignorant what celebrities, Linda McMahon, that's who's in charge of the education department. When we had those people running that type of agency, the only way we can go from here is downhill, right? And so we need to call for better government, better economic system. And if it is socialism, which I hope it is, Raza, understand, we as Chicanos, as Raza from Latin American countries, we're indigenous. It's in our blood. We were practicing what we call quote unquote communism a long time ago before it was even popular, right? We're socialistic long before we were capitalistic, because to be capitalist, you got to, like I said, be able to own those giant factories, those earth movers, those spaceships. We don't own that. We do not own that, and we haven't. And the government isn't going to allow it, because the very few that have money, the Elon Musk, the trillionaires, right, the Mark Zuckerbergs, they own that capital, and they will not allow us to have a piece in that. That they throw us crumbs and say, "Be happy," right? Because they know that we will. But we can't let them do that to us. And finally, I'm gonna conclude with this. What else can we do? Well, people think that voting doesn't have consequences. People think that voting doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter. Don't vote. And I hate to say it, people, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You are shooting yourself in the foot, or you're tying yourself up or tying one arm behind your back and saying, let's have this fight with one arm, because voting is a weapon. Voting is a tool. Voting, however you want to look at it, it's a way to defend ourselves. Remember, what is one of the running themes here? By any means necessary. Yes, with firearms. Yes, with technology. But also, yes, with education, and yes, with civics, meaning we must vote. Those of you who are 18 and older, you must vote, because what's going to happen is the vast majority, which we are, stay home. Somebody else is going to vote for us, or the ignorant people are going to vote for another Trump, right? Going to vote for another, I don't know, Bush. They're going to keep us in these endless wars where people are going to die. They're going to keep us in a system where they lie to us. While people get rich and the rest of us have to pay higher gas prices or higher home places prices, we're going to get kicked out of our apartments or homes because we can't afford it. We're going to keep living a life of misery and poverty, because they don't want us to vote for that reason, because voting has consequences. That includes not just who is in power, for example, the president, but that same president or governor, they actually appoint people like judges and people to run food and science agencies, federal agencies that take care of our food to make sure it's safe, and our water to make sure it's clean, and our air to make sure we can breathe. Look, over for those of you who know what happened in Boyle Heights, East LA, and all these places where there were fires, people couldn't even breathe, right? Well, when those kind of things happen, That's thanks due to poor government. And right now we got some poor government in there. The Trump administration is allowing these corporations to get away with deregulation, with get away with cutting corners, and getting away where they're producing this bad lettuce that people got to eat or are eating. Um, and it's not turning out well, not one bit. So again, that's what I mean by bad lettuce. How can we cure it? Obviously we need a better system. And how do we get that better governmental system? We definitely got to vote and keep stay informed, because that's all I can tell Raza. And one final thing, I said this already, but one final thing, I'll be in Chicago the weekend of July 25th, and that's for a national conference for La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets. I'll be doing a video on that specific topic. What is La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets? How did they come about? How is that different from just the regular Brown Beret chapter? It's very different. It's a highly structured entity that I'm gonna get more into detail, but I'll do a video on that. And one of the things we will be discussing is how do we mobilize our people, not just in the West Coast, but in the East Coast and going forward, to get the young people out there to make that change, to get the older people, when they're old enough to vote, to get off that couch, to make that change, vote for the right thing. Because I think it's promising again that the young people are coming out in favor of socialism. The Brown Berets don't promote politicians. We don't endorse politicians, I should say. We don't endorse a political party. We learned our lesson from years ago where we got burned from endorsing people. What we do is endorse causes. That's why it's called La Causa. What we do is endorse campaigns that favor our people. And that's why a lot of us, we say by any means necessary, including, for example, arming ourselves. Not everybody believes in arming themselves in our community. In Chicano community, a lot of people don't like guns. I don't blame them. Guns kill. But some of us believe that firearms are sometimes going to be our last defense. So we uphold that as a campaign of self defense, military, or militancy. And that's some of the stuff that we talk about at our national conference. We will definitely be talking about other ways, by any means necessary, to defend our gente and uplift our gente. And so look out for that video. I'll do more in detail as we come up. For today, I want to just talk about bad lettuce. Bad lettuce out there killing people. And who's it thanks to? Thank you, Trump. You suck. Bad lettuce is killing people. Bad lettuce is bad. Let's get rid of this gente. I'm out.